are on Long Sands Beach in Maine at the Grain Surf Re-Evolution Festival. There's a bunch of people here that are open-minded and also active towards protecting and preserving our environment, namely grain surfboards and us as well.
And there's nothing better than sharing that with other people, you know? Like, everyone here has a very similar passion, like, for the environment, and yeah, these boards are just unbelievable. We've been testing so many today, and actually testing our new prototype that we have here, Green Lightning surfboards.
Yeah, so it's 100% post-consumer recycled EPS foam, and then an epoxy resin that's bio-derived from the industrial waste streams of wood pulp and vegetable oil processing. I wouldn't say that surfing and entrepreneurship necessarily go hand in hand. We kind of made it so.
And they're both lifestyles, you know, right?
Yeah, definitely. But we've always been kind of business-minded, and you know, what business do you want to go into other than the one that you absolutely love? This is the alternative to polyurethane foam and polyester resin, both of which are highly toxic to procure and also have a lot of solid and liquid waste at the end of the process. It's also carcinogenic, so it's not good for the shaper. You need heavy respiratory masks to actually lay up the resin, which you don't have to do with an epoxy, especially our bio-epoxy.
Yeah, this is a lot safer alternative for the polyurethane, so we've been testing different types of epoxy. We'll keep testing different types of epoxy and maybe go somewhere else, you know, depending on what they come up with next, what kind of foams, what kind of, you know, sealants and all that stuff.
Well, for the last 60 years or so, surfboards have been made out of fiberglass and foam, and these are usually petro-based chemicals that really were adopted because of the benefits to the manufacturers. They did make lighter surfboards than were being made at the time because the traditional surfboard material is wood, which is obviously a renewable resource when managed correctly. So, but in that 60 years, foam and fiberglass became, polyester resin specifically, became the norm for surfboards, and that's the thing that everybody built them out of. And what that means is you have a non-recyclable core product, which is the foam, and a highly volatile petroleum-based shell made out of fundamentally this resin, polyester resin, and all encased with fiberglass cloth, which is a very high energy consumption product to make. It's glass, melted glass essentially, woven into a fabric. And in so doing, they ignored all the heritage of surfing that was really revolved around renewable resources like wood. And they also created a new world for surfers where they were further disconnecting the surfer from the thing they cared the most about, which is having an environmental, a connection to their environment, a connection to the natural world, to the surf, to the waves, the air, the breeze. You know, it's just a person and a board and the water. It's very simple. Having to have one of those elements be a completely non-organic, non-recyclable, non-recycled, unsustainable, throwaway, landfill, occupying piece of toxin is really a disruption to that kind of balance. Grain Surfboards makes wooden surfboards that are built from locally grown, sustainable yield harvested cedar. Since they're hollow, they're by volume mostly air. Inside is an internal frame that looks a little bit like the inside of an airplane wing. What's been happening in recent years is there's been these splinter groups forming that have other things in mind about surfing. They want to restore that sort of third leg and get surfers to be able to have equipment to surf on that is more in tune with their values and with the actual experience of surfing, which is very personal and pure. So as a result, we have people who are taking some of the waste products of other industries, whether in the case of Entropy Resins, who's here today in the form of Ray Ventano, they are making resins out of, epoxy resins out of pine oils that come from the paper pulp industry and from other waste products from the biofuels industry. And they're making these resins that are a much greener resin, 50% organic content in one case. It's unheard of.
I have a PhD in biochemistry. My partner, who's my brother Desi, he has a background in material science engineering. And we developed the resin because of the lack of a green resin in the composites industry. And because of our passion for sporting goods like surfing, snowboarding, and skateboarding, we developed the resin to be a high-performance composite resin while taking into consideration the impact on the environment from a manufacturing of the resin standpoint, as well as the overall carbon footprint of the resin. A typical traditional surfboard is made out of polyurethane foam and polyester resin, and those are pretty much very volatile, toxic chemicals. Probably the difference between traditional materials and what grain does is obviously they're made out of wood, and then they use epoxy resin, which doesn't have all the emissions that polyester resin does. So it's a bio-based epoxy resin that uses a green chemistry as well as bio-based ingredients that go into the processing of the resin. We've done life cycle analysis that shows the overall carbon footprint or CO2 emissions that come off of the manufacturing of our resin is 50% less than what a regular petroleum-based epoxy resin uses. So quantified, it means for every ton of epoxy that we produce, there's 4 tons of CO2 emissions saved. Roughly that translates into, for each ton of epoxy, a small car would basically drive almost 20,000 miles. So that's actually a lot of carbon footprint savings just by using the resin.
Trending towards eco-friendly surfboards is definitely something that's inevitable. We're trying to make it the industry standard. The bigger, already established surfboard companies aren't as quick to do it because they already have their supply chain set up, they already have the familiarity with the type of materials that they're working with, and it's going to cost them more money, so they just don't want to do it.
Yeah, and it's definitely a specific niche in the industry right now, you know, like it's, you either go all in or you don't do it kind of thing. Like, I mean, yeah, what big surf companies are doing it right now, really?
None that I can think of.
Yeah.
Kind of the thing that's going on here at Grain with surfing and environmentalism is that it's a vehicle actually to inspire people, whether they surf or not, to do something better. There's a better way to do things. There's a more eco-friendly way to do things. And so hopefully the takeaway from all that is what we're doing here with the actual surfboard is just an example of what you can do in your everyday life in terms of doing something better or more environmentally responsible.